Pierre, you know already, you saw it on the web. He has a large experience in hospitality. He was a GM of few hotels. He is an expert in opening, and today he will speak to us about the operational asset management. Pierre, the floor is yours. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ray, for the introduction, and thank you also for allowing me to be present with you people and share our views and our best practice, let's say, in operational asset management. I call this operational asset management because I want to stress the fact that this is mainly concerning above GOP information. And below GOP information is equally important, but today we'll concentrate more on operational asset management because that's where the money eventually comes from. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to introduce a number of principles. We'll talk about some of the KPIs that are used today and that we all know. We are going to take you a little bit through how my approach is on reading P&L. Then I want to share with you a methodology that we are applying, and it's recent. It's relatively recent that you can see this pop up. It's called profit conversion loss containment. It's for some of you maybe quite new, but we'll discuss that. And we'll look at maximizing profit and containing loss, which is the term of the subject. Then we'll go to the main drivers of the GOP. GOP is what operators are being measured on, but also GOP is the first line of profit where the owner gets to see some of his revenue. We'll talk about benchmarking and the importance of some of the KPIs concerned with benchmarking, and then we'll open up for questions or more if this is the case. So let's dive into the subject and talk a little bit about principles. What is an asset manager? I think we need to understand what asset management is about. Asset management is about helping generally the owners to increase cash flow and increase the value of the asset. So the asset manager will be instrumental in assisting owners and providing recommendations. What you do as an asset manager, you provide recommendations to an owner. Sometimes also you are allowed to discuss directly with the operating team. Generally, you have to ask permission for that. But in some of the mandates that we do as asset managers, yes, we are talking directly to the operating team, so that means the hotel team. And we are providing to the owner direct recommendations about what it is that each individual property can do better. The advantage of the owner for an asset manager is that because we have several mandates in different parts of the world, we have offices also in other parts of the world. We are therefore aware of what the industry is doing, and we can put some of the operations of those individual hotels into perspective. Interesting for an owner when he's in the Middle East or in Russia or in Belgium to understand that what is happening in similar hotels in his region. Obviously, the whole approach is based on maximizing the value, but we can talk about the asset as being the building, but never underestimate also the reputation of a hotel is equally important. Some regions of the world, and I'm talking especially Russia, especially Middle East, you will see that for owners, the reputation or the enhanced reputation to their name that can come from operating a business is very important, and therefore for them to understand and better maximize the value includes this value of reputation. So I said it before, the asset manager is normally working for the owner. We'll talk later about how this could change or how this could change a little bit depending on which management contract you could be under. An asset manager generally is translating for another party what the operator is saying. I'll show you in a slide later on that between an owner and an operator, they can be different objectives. Obviously, for an asset manager, it's important to be able to add value to his mandate and show to the customers or the owners a different perspective. You have the readings of the operator, and the operator is explaining every month through the management report what he's doing and how he's done his sale. But for an asset manager, it will be the case of evaluating this and probably give a different perspective based on experience and also based on his knowledge of the market. So if we talk about the owner and the operator, we know that there are opposite views there. The revenues for an owner, for example, and the revenues for a operator are not the same. We know, yes, it's very expensive. You have to pay an operator a base fee and you have to pay him a management fee. But the real money for the operator is in the management fee. So how can he work the GOP? How can the operator increase the GOP so that his return is the best possible? But that could be that objective of increased GOP is conflicting with owner's interest. One of the very first examples that comes to my mind is, for example, if I were an operator, I would have a maximum of maintenance contracts signed, obviously with above the GOP, but where the replacement cost is not as much important as would be just the maintenance cost, meaning that I could have a management contract which is cheaper, therefore the GOP could be lower, GOP could be higher, but that could be against the value of the building by which, these management companies or these maintenance companies, they will bring you a used pump from somewhere else. They'll install it in your hotel. It's going to be cheaper. You have a better GOP, but the value of the building as such for the owner will not increase. The owner's return, like I said, comes from the net income after he served the debt. That is something which is totally different than the operator. The operator works on the GOP. The risk for the owner is not the same as the risk for the operator. The operator can lose income 1 year, 2 years. At some point, he can invoke some of the clauses in the contract and saying, look, I have issues delivering the results, etc., but he'll still get a base fee. He'll still get a management fee to some extent. For the owner, it could be an issue that the building as such, the whole asset, is worth a lot less or a lot more. So the value for an owner is looking at how can I either refinance, how can I sell, but what's the value in money of that property. An operating company, and I've worked for an operating company, adding hotels to the portfolio is almost as important as making money. Some of the growing operating companies find that signing new deals is more important than making money. Therefore, you will sometimes see owners where they make huge promises from an own operating company, but sadly, they will not translate them into practice. So you will understand that between the owner and the operating company, there could be conflicting interests. Generally, when they sign agreements, it's like a matrimonial agreement or a contract. You think everything will be fine, and that's why you sign the contract, but things may turn out differently. That's where it could be that the asset management mandate or an asset manager can add value to translate for the owner what the operating company is doing. Now, look at some of the key stakeholders and the role of the asset management. The asset manager will push performance. I mean, it's in everybody's interest to have a well-performing property. It's in the interest, obviously, of the owners, the shareholders. It's in the interest of the management company. That's the first two that we look at. But we must not forget that a good working asset, a good working hotel is also the interest of the employees, is also the interest of the suppliers, also the interest of the guests. So the role of an asset manager will be to assist owners into driving performance. Most of the management contracts, I'm not talking about franchise contracts, but I'm talking about management contracts, the staff, the employees are employed by the owner. So good performance by an asset manager when he helps the owner to maximize profit. In a way, he also helps the employee. Now, the role of an asset manager could be looked at in four main activities. One is to review the financial statement. That is something that we do for a number of hotels on a monthly basis. And we control and enhance operational performance. So what is happening in this hotel, whether it's in Geneva, in Brussels, in Moscow, etc., and how does that look compared to the other information that we have? Our role is also to provide owners with legal advice. And our role as asset managers is also to provide investment advice. Is to do, for example, return on investment calculations. An owner wants to reinvest in the rooms. Obviously, he will ask his operator, but the asset manager will at some point either produce his own numbers or validate the operator's numbers to make sure that if and when an owner is investing money, he's going to get the return on investment that is the most likely. So that is something we do as asset managers. When I say providing legal advice, this is an important part of it. We sometimes tend to forget how important the legal advice from asset managers can be. We are not obviously aware as asset managers of the legal aspects of operating a property in every country. We can find that, but it's things like segregation of authority. It's things like looking at all the necessary licenses and permits and how these can affect operations. That is going to be where our role could come. Now, if you look at more of these activities, obviously have even more of that. Some of them are in the previous slide. But market conditions, an asset manager will have to be very much aware of the market conditions in the markets where he's doing a mandate for asset management. If we are doing an asset management mandate in Geneva, we need to be aware of the market conditions in Switzerland and in Geneva. That requires a lot of work. It requires reading up on things. It requires taking contact with local hotel associations to get their information. It requires for us also to read the national, regional, and city statistics to be able to provide the owners with a view on things. It also, when we say we operate, we monitor the operating performance, or we benchmark the operational performance. That also means that on a regular basis, an asset manager within his mandate will go on site and will possibly stay and do a quality check, whether he does it himself or he has somebody do it for him. But a quality check and knowing what and how the asset is operated is a very big part of the role of an asset manager and the recommendations he could give to the owner following those activities. One has to understand that you obviously, as an owner, you have the choice of taking or not taking an asset management. I'm listing here a number of consequences that could be for an owner to not have an asset manager. Some of the asset managers are employed by the owner directly. I know some of the owners have management companies themselves, and they employ their own asset management. For individual hotels, for smaller hotel groups, this is not always possible. The other role an asset manager could be is to provide a different perspective or a validation for existing work. This happens to us on a regular basis, where whether for a year or for a semester, we're being asked by hotel owners, could you give us a view on asset management so that we can either validate our thought processes or we can invalidate them and then possibly look at different. I would concentrate in the consequence of lack of asset management is that we know that some of our owners can be quite emotional looking at their assets and looking at their own investments because they run the personal risk or their company runs a risk. An asset manager will be sometimes able to balance those emotions a little bit because we're all very happy when things go well. But we're also quite emotional when things don't go so well. And then, you need to be looking at your owner's operator's relationship as something that you want to last for a certain time, preferably the length of the contract. But when and if things go sour, sometimes an asset manager can help put things in perspective for both sides, and can help both the owner and the operator to look at common ground, but also to look at sometimes differences between them. Obviously, when you have the opposite of that, you have the benefits of having an asset manager. Um, Asset managers, the benefits of them are clear because we have different mandates going on. We have a different perspective. We use some calculation methodologies of which the owners sometimes are not aware. Know that asset managers operate sometimes for investment companies like banks, insurance companies, etc. And we also know from experience that some of the real estate specialists of this world, some of the finance specialists of the world, are not used to the KPIs that we use and sometimes have difficulties understanding them, or have difficulties understanding the relationship between those different KPIs. But most importantly, most of us can read an Excel sheet is how do I translate numbers into activity? That's obviously where the operational uh, experience from an asset manager can add value, is when we are able to say, okay, if you want to raise your average house rate by so much in that market, maybe you should try this or try this or try this. Because looking at numbers is one thing, translating those numbers into operational solutions is quite different. That's why I call this session operational asset management, because let's not forget the operational side of these numbers. They need to be produced by selling rooms, by selling covers at the best possible unit price to the best possible profit, so that money can be made. So some other the benefits here certainly, and the advantage also of an asset manager is that we are being asked regularly by the owners, could you do more analysis or different analysis? Whether it's looking at technical solutions for a building, or whether it's looking at opening new reputations, or possibly some owners that could say, okay, I want to invest in another property. Could you have a look at this? So that is certainly something that are the benefits of an asset. We must talk at this point of hotel management contracts. In this world, we have three generic types of management contracts, of which franchise is the most distributed. American market today, we can see that approximately 90 to 92% of the hotel contracts are franchise contracts. In Europe, this is increasing big time. We see more and more of the management companies that go for franchise. It's also because of the owners, because a lot of owners today are mature and want to operate their own business. So franchise contract is the most widely distributed. Then you have the management contract, and then you have lease contract. Lease contract is a relationship where you have a landlord and a lessee. That kind of contract is quite high risk for the operators, so they tend not to go there anymore. So, but the asset management mandate you will see mostly in the managed contract. Why? Because it's an operator managing the operation for the owner. All the responsibility lays with the owner, because the legal entity is in name of the owner, the staff is employed by the owner, all the licenses and permits in most of the countries where I have been operating in are in the name of the owner. So the owner would like to understand or check to have an understanding of what the operator is doing. Also because in a management contract, the performance clause, which is generally there, and let's say hopefully it should be, the performance clause will say that between the owner and the operator, for that performance clause to kick in, to start, it should be done by a third party. Most of the asset managers will be recognized as being a third party that is allowed to intervene when an owner is saying to his operator, look, I don't think you're doing a good job. We are today in default of this management contract, and I am basing my information on the successive reports of my asset manager. So adjust this slide to understand you. I'm not going to do a full explanation on all the contracts. However, I could do this if you so wish, but it's mainly to explain that the asset management mandates will generally take place in the environment of managed contracts. I've not explained the difference between the three differences here. So generally you see three types of management contracts: straight management contract side, the threshold managed contract, where you will only, the operator only gets a certain fee as if and when there is a certain threshold that is being achieved in the GOP. And some of the contracts show guaranteed results to the owner, whereby by contract, the operator will tell an owner, for example, I will deliver you in the course of 12 months, 1 million euros of GOP, etc. So those are the three different kinds of contract, and that's where most of the management or asset management mandate. So let's look a little bit at the KPIs and the calculation method. The KPIs are those. I'm citing here a number of them. I'm not going to give you the calculation methodology itself, because that you can, I'm sure, find on the internet. There's enough. What I want to explain here when we look at these operational KPIs is that you can never look at one KPI. I still talk today to operators, hotel owners, that will talk about the food cost and how important the food cost is. The food cost is only, first of all, it's not that important anymore, because I think the HR cost in most of the countries that we operate in is much more important than just the food cost. But people will talk to me, and even some investors, they will talk about occupancy rate. How much percentage do I need to? That's only half the story. The other half has to be the average house rate. How much rooms do I sell at which rate? And then we have the RevPAR. Why do we have a RevPAR? The RevPAR has been introduced simply because nobody today with public information is capable of knowing what the average house rate is, because that depends on the number of rooms that's actually being sold. However, from public information, I can go to the National Bank in France or Belgium or any other authorities in the world and ask for any public company or Société Anonyme or any other company that is publishing his numbers. I can find out how much the revenue has been by that company. I also know which hotel has how many rooms. So one divided by the other will give me a universal number that most of the owners today will look at, because it's a public number. Same with profit per available room. The POP may not be understood or may not be public information, but certainly some of the profit lines will be public knowledge, and you can calculate those per available. So these operational KPIs are important because they will drive the way you look at a P&L, profit and loss statement, and it will drive the way you can find where problems could be. And where are we looking first? And that's going to be one of the explanations I will tell you as we look at the P&L. Sorry, but one has to understand how these relate to each other. And for us to understand how the P&L, etc., works, I will tell you later. We have this universal book that everybody should have if he's talking about hospitality accounting, and that's the USA. So the Uniform System Account for the lodging industry. That is the reference to understand how these KPIs are calculated, but also the reference on what information, what costs, and what revenues are. So it is the main, we have to understand what the main KPIs are in hospitality, some of the operational KPIs. Some of the financial KPIs are equally important. Let's not concentrate too much on the investment ones. But let's concentrate certainly on the ones that concern cash flow. Because cash flow for an owner is king. He needs to know how much cash is coming out of his operation. Because that cash flow will allow for the owner to do a number of things. Allow him to reinvest in the property. It will allow him to also possibly invest into other properties. So the operator will have to work on this cash flow issue and how to have as much cash flow as possible. One of the things that we will be looking at as asset managers is the number of days that hotel invoices are open and how well a hotel is chasing customers. Because operators, we all like to give the good news, but what about the bad news? So we have to understand these financial KPIs. Open invoices is one. The other things that we will look at, the matter of operational asset management, is the stock level. How much wine, how much food is present in the hotels, how many soap, because these are all very big amounts, and they tie in a lot of cash. So we have to understand this. We have to also understand that this or that operator is not playing around with stock levels in order to increase or decrease the profitability of the hotel, because we can play with that. We also need to know that as an asset manager about the methodology that is used to evaluate the stocks, the levels that are present in the hotel. We need to understand that at which method has been used for the financial evaluation, the value of the. In some of the countries, it's become standard practice to use separate companies to do the stock taking, just in order to ensure that the stock taking is always using the same methodology and always done in the same way. We are, for example, on a number of mandates in the UK. There's a company called Venners, which will send once a month an individual that is going to come and look at your inventory and calculate the value. It always the same. So operational and financial KPIs. There are probably more, but I'm listing here the main ones that we are looking at when asset management. Now, how do we read a P&L? How do we read a P&L? I'm giving you here the image of the book. You can order this book online. Some libraries will stock it, but they're very, very few. But you can order this online. If you type into Google Uniform System of Accounts for the lodging industry, you will certainly be able to buy it. That's what I've done anyway. It's become the Bible. It's quite easy to read if you know about hotel numbers, but it's certainly a help if you want to know which cost goes into which department, where is reservation cost going, where is sales cost going. Those things are important because they can drive the results of the hotel. They can drive the presentation of the numbers. So it has been now for a number of years. This is the 11th edition. It has been for many years now that the same system is being used by the hotels around the world, so that it is a universal system of presenting numbers. For the operators, this is important because by using similar management accounting, this is management accounting, this is not statutory accounting, but by using the same system all over the world, for example, you are always sure that you can compare one hotel in Abu Dhabi to another hotel in Russia or another hotel. Now, when we look at P&Ls, obviously we'd look at the revenue first. Second, we look at will be GOP, that's for sure. Why? Because the operator is going to be remunerated on GOP, but also the GOP is for the owner the start of where he starts to see return on investment or remuneration to the owner. Obviously, you go for the big amounts first. And both when I was in hotel management myself, when I was at head office for the group, or today in my asset management mandates, we have this plus or minus 5% rule. That means that from one month to another, we will only comment on those numbers that show a 5% deviation. Otherwise, there is too much to discuss. And plus or minus 5% generally within the year, that's the kind of thing that you will see. There's always a little bit of fluctuation here and there because a bank holiday being on a different date, because a conference being organized on a different date. So we would assume that you apply the plus or minus 5% rule If it's over 5%, we should have a comment, an explanation. We should look at the reason. And if it's below 5%, some of the mandates, some of the owners, some of the individuals I talk to, they say, well, if it's better than anticipated, let's not comment. We like it. It's a valid point. However, we also say that if I'm doing plus 5%, who says that I should not have done plus 12%? So even plus should be analyzed. So when we're doing better, we should look at, can we replicate this? So if it's a one-off, or if can we transform that into a multiple? And if things go well, obviously we want to make sure that it could possibly have been better. So that's why we say even plus 5% should be analyzed. After that, how we look at a P&L is that we will look at the highest profitability first. Makes sense. Again, when I talk to some of the individual owners, when I talk to some of the owners that have created their own business or that come from hospitality background, they will talk to me about the food cost. The 80 room hotel with some F&B, but they will talk to me about food cost. That's not where the money is. The money is generally in room. The money is generally in meeting and event. So that's where we start looking. If there is an issue in F&B, we'll look at it later. That's not where the highest profitability is in most cases. For every hotel, we should understand the sales mix of every hotel, and we should understand where the profit normally is. But obviously, we will look first at those departments that have the highest profitability, because anything going amiss in those have the highest impact on subsequent. Then we will always look at HR. In any part of the world, I don't know if any deviance from that, HR cost is the biggest. We are spending some parts of the world up to 50 or more than that on staff. The salaries, the contribution that comes from the employer, between the social security, etc. Those costs can be quite high. I remember opening some of my hotels that I worked in, and I knew that the first year we sometimes hit 56, 60% HR. So that is something that is always in need of attention. Then we will look at the total percentage of undistributed expenses. Depending on the region of this world, you will have a percentage that is generally accepted as being the undistributed expenses. Just for those of you who are not that familiar with undistributed expenses, is everything has to do for those departments that are not bringing revenue. In general, it's advertising and sales, repairs and maintenance, energy, as well as technology, IT, because since the last edition of the USAF format, the IT department is tracked as a separate. And then obviously you need to understand and know what the percentage of the the advertisement and sales is, and you need to understand what the percentage of repair and maintenance, because you have industry standards, regional standards that apply. And if you know that the industry standard for repair and maintenance in Europe today is around about between 3.2 and 3.9%, you should understand this and know that if the number is different in the hotel that you're looking at, you should then immediately go and look for those. And why repair and maintenance? Because as an asset manager, we are responsible to the owner of the building and the upkeeping of the building. Now, if we look at something new that I want to talk to you about, something new, I mean, for some it may be new, for maybe some few it could be not, but this is something that I've seen come up, let's say, in the last 3 to 5 years. It's something called profit conversion or loss containment. I'm giving you an explanation here, is that, for example, if you do 110 sales instead of 100, you know that you're producing 10 more revenue. How much of that 10 am I actually going to see in the bottom line? When we say nothing, when we do nothing, when we don't target this, you will generally see in most operations, at least that's my experience in the past, that those 10 extra revenue never completely transform into full profit. There's a number of reasons, but there should be a target. There should be a target. That's what, the Accors and the Marriotts and the Radissons of this world, the Residors, are telling their GMs that for every 10 more you do in revenue, you should have at least 5 more in profit. But the same is valid for the adverse, saying that if I do less revenue, I should obviously do less costs. And that's the more tricky one. That's where it forces people to become proactive versus reactive. Generally, when things go better than anticipated, it generally is okay. We don't always transform everything into profit, but we generally do. However, what we cannot accept is that the fact that people just accept all costs to be equal for less revenue. So if we know this, then there is also, we could apply the same methodology here, saying, look, if the budget was 110, but I do 100, then I should do at least -5 in loss containment. So that means that my costs should decrease by 5 and not accept that all costs will remain. And this is helping operations. This is helping owners to understand that we can become proactive versus reactive. This is an absolute rule. This means that we will not always be in a position where we can convert either profit or loss to the 50% extent or the 50% level. However, it should force us to think. We know at the beginning of the month that this month is going to be better or worse than what we had anticipated. If we know this, then we should, and this is a management obligation, management responsibility, management should look at ways of lessening costs as of an immediate. When you know your bookings are down, when you know that the business is not coming in as much, what are you going to do? And that's where sometimes we are too much reactive versus proactive. So we apply, when we do asset management mandates, we apply this conversion percentage where we say, okay, 50% rule is a good rule to start with. I will show you there's some other rules that you could apply, but 50% profit conversion or loss containment is a good starting. Now, we could talk about different things. We know that when the average house rate is increasing, profit should be higher. Why? Because the costs for selling a room at 500 or the costs for selling the same room at 600 are identical. So if I manage to get most of my difference, let's imagine here it's an increase in revenue. If most of my increase in revenue is coming from average house rate, this can be perfectly calculated. Well, we think, most of the chains today think, head offices will think that 85% of that should convert into immediate profit. And then you have the other numbers here. I can share with Mr. Junius later a page of calculation examples that he can then share with you to show you a little bit more into detail. But I'm giving you here an example of the 50% conversion rule for an actual situation of a hotel that had in the budget 640 for the month of February 2020. Top line revenue for the rooms department was 640, but they achieved 563. So if you make the difference of that, it's 77,000 less revenue. So if you apply the 50% rule, the cost difference should have been minus 28,000. However, they only achieved to reduce their cost by 25,000. So we know that there is a missed opportunity there from approximately 13,000 Swiss francs. So, it's not about telling the management that they took the wrong decisions or, telling them that they should have achieved 38,000. That's not the immediate objective. The immediate objective here is to tell them, look, if we apply this conversion, there could be opportunities for you to look at your costs and make sure that everything that you could have done to transform loss into reduced costs is done. And I'm thinking, for example, at how much of the costs are variable, how much of the costs are fixed. The higher the percentage of fixed costs, the higher or the less ability you will have to transform possible increases or decreases in revenue into immediate profit or reduced loss. So you will find that a lot of efforts in the last decennia in hotels has been to make as many fixed costs or change as many fixed costs into variable costs as possible. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the reason, for example, why a lot of hotels have decided to go for clean per room solutions instead of having their own staff, because you can transform that into variable or semi-variable. So this is an example. You have we created a little model where it shows red when the department did not achieve this profit conversion, but if you look at the F&B department in this case, they did do less than anticipated revenue. However, they have been able to transform a lot of it. Good cost management has allowed them to transform that. So it's showing people about either success or lost opportunity is profit conversion, and loss containment is proactive thinking versus reactive. So if you look at maximizing profit, we ask a number of questions. A lot of the questions we ask are about numbers, but we also look at one of the first things we look at, and it's got nothing to do with numbers, but we will, in the framework of asset management, operational asset management, we will look, for example, at the website of a property. It's strange to see today how many websites show old information. How many websites are not up to date? How many websites are not easy to book? How many websites show the same rate for the next month? We talked to a hotel not so long ago in Paris. Okay, I understand that the business at that time when we talked to them was very bad because of the manifestations, because of the troubles they had in Paris and what have you, but they showed exactly the same rate for the next 2 months. That's not telling people that is a good idea to book that hotel. Then we looked at, how does the hotel appear on the other booking channel? Some of us, we outsource part of our sales effort to online travel agents, to a third-party website. How does it look? Part of our mandate, obviously, is to talk with the sales department and look at what went well, what didn't go so well, and transform this into recommendations for the sales department. What we also want to tell people when we do asset management mandates is, what about price level versus direct competition? We all look at the prices of our rooms, obviously. This is something that people would naturally look at. But what about the price of the parking? What about the price of the internet access? Because some regions of the world still charge for internet. What about the price of a coffee? How cheap or how expensive is your coffee versus the others? If you have a restaurant, how your main dish, your highest success dish, how does it price versus the competition? So we are looking at those also, because sometimes there are opportunities, including when we look at packages. We will look at competitors, and we will see. We'll come to benchmarking later, but we will certainly look at how are the others selling Easter holidays or Christmas holidays or Valentine. How are they doing that? And how is the hotel that we have a mandate for? How are they doing? Strangely enough, I was looking at a website of a restaurant group that and you will say this is impossible, but it still happens. 2 weeks ago, I checked a big catering group that is operating a number of restaurants, and their last year's Valentine's menu was still visible. So it's those stupid things that will tell customers that maybe not. So if the customers say maybe not, then maybe they will not show up. So then we also look at segmentation of sales mix, obviously, where, and especially now with COVID, we are getting many questions about, what about my segmentation? Do I have the right segmentation? What can I do, etc. Because what we know is that segments that we used to sell in December or January are certainly not be the segments that we're going to sell for in June and July. So once we know about the segmentation, obviously we need to check with the sales department what activities do they deploy per segment? And based on our experience, based on our knowledge, we'll make recommendations on that. The questions we always ask in the framework of asset management is the first question we will ask when we look at activities is which ones do we keep? I know a lot of situations where the first questions will be, oh, can we make a new action plan? Fine. But how about those things that already work, that have been costly in the beginning, that today are on cruising speed? Can we please look at those first because they cost the less and they have the highest impact? So the first question for us will be, what is it that we are keeping? The next one is going to be, okay, what new things are we going to do? And at the end, the last question also needs to be, what activities shall we actually stop? Because there's a lot of companies out there, a lot of hotels, there's things that we keep doing and we never conscientiously stop them. So it should be in everybody's mind when we're discussing with the sales team and the management team that we ask the question, look, what are you not going to do anymore? Seems like a rhetorical question, but trust me, it helps you asking yourself that question and making sure that then it's actually. And then we'll also try asking, it sounds one of those rhetorical questions, but one of the questions we will ask is, okay, what's missing? What's missing versus the competition? Or what is it you'd like to do that you're not being able to? Or am I missing out opportunities here? Should I have a pool? Should I have a bar? Which is then going to help us asset managers to tell the owners, look, there are investment opportunities. One of the things that we then need to talk about is benchmarking. Benchmarking is, and I put a nice picture there of a fruitcake, strawberry season today, so that's good. But what is my part of the cake? If I am a hotel, if I represent a hotel, if I represent an asset for an owner, I need to ensure that the hotel is getting the biggest slice of the cake. And that's where benchmarking comes in. Benchmarking comes in because we need to know what the hotels are doing, what the other hotels are doing. Not always possible because there are conditions for you to set up what we call the competitive set. As Ray introduced just at the beginning, I have been indeed opening a number of hotels. When you open a hotel, you are not allowed to have a competitive set because you've not been operating for a number of months. So there are a number of conditions that you need to fulfill before you can actually start to do benchmarking with the companies that we know, companies like STR, Hotspot. STR being the most famous one. And actually, they started their business out of benchmarking because they were allowed, or at least Europe laws prohibited hotels to discuss rates and occupancy between each other. So this company started allows you to exchange numbers between hotels. There are, like I said, very strict rules that apply. But when we do asset management mandates, one of the first questions to ensure that there is benchmarking in place, and then we will look at 3 indexes. Market penetration index, it's your part of the slice. So if the demand in the city is 100, how much of that demand is the hotel getting? The average rate index means that you compare yourself, your hotel, your property against similar hotels in your comp set. And then the RGI, the RevPAR index, some of the people out there call it the revenue generation index, is how much revenue could you possibly generate versus the comp set. And then you will get a ranking. You will get a ranking. If you are 5 in the comp set, you'll be number 5, you'll be number 4. And then when you calculate the index, it should show, if you're doing well, a number which is higher than 1. And I'll show you a calculation method in. So if we look, for example, at the average rate index, the hotel KPI that measures the performance of the average rate, average daily rate, compared to their concept during the same period. So it's based on a same period, so it's generally a monthly cycle, and it's calculated by having your average daily rate divided by the concept's average daily rate. And for example, if your rate is 150 of the month of June, and the comp set June average house rate is 120, 150 divided by 120 gives you 1.25. Therefore, it's higher than 1. Therefore, you are outperforming the competition. And that's very important for an owner. An owner wants this information because the operator is going to tell him, oh, we are doing very well. We had 5% increase. Okay? That doesn't tell me if all the others are doing plus 10%. I'm only doing plus 5%. Then I'm not getting what is called, you see this little blue arrow here, I'm not getting my fair share. Fair share is an equal part. So if everybody scores 1, that would mean that I would have a rate 120 divided by 120 would be equal to 1. So everybody would get the same share. If I get 125, that means that I get 25% more of the cake than the others. And if we go below that, at 0.75, if my rate was lower than the rate, then I would get less than the other. So an owner would want to understand these benchmark numbers because he wants to understand the performance of a hotel versus the other. We are looking at monthly numbers, but more importantly, we are certainly also looking at tendency, at evolution. And here I'm using an example of a hotel that we are working for. We based the numbers on STR Global, which is a company just to you before. But for example, for this hotel, we see that the tendency of that hotel on the 3 indicators that we are looking at is it's going slowly backwards. It's going downward. So for a period of time, they were outperforming their competition. But as of March 19 and after, they are underperforming versus the competition. So when we present those numbers to the owners, there's a number of questions that an owner can ask himself. First, is the operation a problem? In this particular case, we know the situation. It's also because we are telling the owner, well, you need to very urgently reinvest in your property because one of the reasons you are losing this market share and the average rate is because the competition is investing more and upgrading their products more than what you have been doing the last 10 years. So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the indicators that we look at to evaluate an asset. How is it performing versus the competition? So you have the average rate index, you have the market penetration index, and then you have the RevPAR index, which are the 3 main ones. So if we look at the main drivers to the GOP, again, GOP is in most management contracts, that's where the money will be coming from for the operators, because base fee is only 2%, that is head office cost. The main money for the operator will come from GOP. The highest possible GOP is important, as it is for the owner, because the owner, that's where he starts seeing where his money will come from. Because the GOP is going to pay for reimbursement, the GOP is going to pay for amortizations and reserves and taxes, insurances on the building, obviously, not the operation. And the owner's return, whether it's a dividend, whether it's cash money that is coming to you. As I said before, occupancy is one aspect, price is another. Revenue management is an aspect of our mandate. We talked a lot about our discussion with the sales department, but we also need to look at the revenue management. Now, the question, of course, who's in charge of revenue management? And there are strict rules out there employed by all the groups, at least the groups that I know of, is that the sales department definitely is not in charge of revenue management because of segregation of authorities and also because of, the sales department should concentrate on volume and the revenue manager should concentrate on the highest possible rate at any given time. Not saying the highest rate, saying the highest possible rate at any given time, because that's, again, driving the duty. The third aspect of what really matters is costs. Revenue is first. Revenue, because GOP. But revenue is first. And one of the aspects, a lot of people are concentrating first on costs, but always remember that costs is something that you do once. You can only sell your house once, but you can create revenue multiple. We talked about HR costs, sure, and also because it's generally a fixed cost. So the question must be, how can we transform our fixed cost as many variable costs? We can look at that. Outsourcing, we could look at outsourcing. A lot of people think about outsourcing, they think about cleaning. But there are solutions out there in some of the countries that we know about outsourcing HR, at least the admin part, outsourcing finance, outsourcing IT. The advantage of outsourcing is also that you will generally get higher professionalism because those people have more experience, can be trained better, and they can divide part of their time to you, but also to others, so they have a different perspective. Outsourcing is more expensive, yes, we know, but it will bring you a certain aspect of variability, which fixed employment. Then I have always been a good advocate of commission-based business. People don't like OTAs. A lot of our hotel partners, a lot of hotel owners don't like OTAs. Yes, but what I do know about commissions is generally I only pay them whenever I have actually produced a revenue. So I have in the past and still today, and generally we are good advocates of commission-based business. All of these are fine. All these numbers are fine, and profitability is fine, but we should never forget about customer satisfaction. When we are doing mandates for asset management, we are, as much as we look at profitability, we will always integrate the questions about measuring customer satisfaction and seeing what the tendency or the trend is for customer satisfaction. Because I can produce the best food cost in the world, but that will probably mean that I'm giving my customer almost nothing to eat. So if he's not happy, he's not going to come back. And if he's not happy, he's not going to spend any money. Same is for the employee satisfaction. All the numbers are good, but we have to monitor employee satisfaction. I talked looking at HR numbers. HR numbers also means that I will be looking at things like sick days, or training days, because we want to monitor employee satisfaction, because happy employees make happy customers who make happy owners. I always like to quote Mr. Richard Branson, who says that he doesn't care about customers, he cares about his employees because they are working for the customer. For many owners, it's important also what the e-reputation of the brand is that they have chosen, or the e-reputation of the asset. So when they start seeing negative comments on TripAdvisor, when they start seeing negative comments on the other websites, that is something also that we will monitor as assets. Then last but not least, certainly also the maintenance of the building. Within a management contract, I have told you there is a provision for or not a provision, the main drive for the management contract for many operators is going to maximize the GOP. But maximizing the GOP can be done in a lot of ways. One of the ways is to not do maintenance or do the minimum of the minimum of maintenance. And I have seen many management contracts where at the end of the management, we have issues because if there is a clause in the management contract for the operator to give back the building in the same state as he originally found it, the operator generally then finds an issue that he doesn't have the cash available to bring back the building in the original state. Or if there is no such provision in the management contract, then the owner has a problem because he will inherit a building after a number of years, which is probably in the worse state than when he gave it to the operator if things go bad, which is not always the case, luckily. Most of the situations, most of the relations that we are currently involved are happy situations. Which brings me to the end of my slides, and happy to open up a discussion, happy to answer questions if you have any on the much information that gave you probably a reasonable fast pace, but let's take some time for questions and me answering them.
Well, thank you very much, Pierre. And I was worried a little bit, and I was wondering how can you make sexy, boring things, and you've done fantastically because usually speaking about figures and asset management, it's not always exciting. And thank you very much. It was really exciting. Now the floor is yours. Please ask your question. Don't forget to unmute the microphone in order to hear you. Please.
Thank you, Reli.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm Flavia Shek. I was wondering regarding the management contracts, the one that you were mentioning with the guarantees. I have to admit that I haven't seen any so far, a management contract that would have a guarantee. So my question to you is, in this case, where there is a management contract which offers a guarantee to the owner, are there penalties? I mean, in case of the mentioned, let's say, GOP amount or income level that is guaranteed, how is it guaranteed? Through penalties?
Well, the understanding is that, for example, and I've seen a couple of those contracts, and they are more recent. The old days, it's a thing of the last 5 years. But the last contract that I remember seeing was a contract by which the owner was guaranteed a result of X amount, let's say 1 million. The operator would promise for the first 5 years, or you could also introduce this in a contract, but it could be for 5 years, could be for 10 years. The owner would be guaranteed a fixed amount as a minimum return to the owner.
Okay.
So if there was more than 1 million, fine, it would be more than 1 million. But the owner would get a guarantee by the operator saying, look, we guarantee at least 1 million, which means that if at the end of the year, the GOP or the return to the owner was only 800,000, the operator would cash or fork the money, would give the money, 200,000, to complement in order to get to 1 million.
Okay.
Obviously, this guarantee comes with quite strict conditions also from the operator to the owner. Meaning, for example, that all the clauses of the operator would have to be respected. And I take an example again of the same hotel. I was working for the operator at the time. But if I have a guarantee as an operator, I will insist, and I mean insist with a capital I, that if you promise to me that I would get all the linen for my hotel, I would insist that I could only start working or performing the day you have provided me the full inventory of the linen, or the day that the hotel is 100% finished as per the specification of the brand. I've opened 90 hotels, and of those 90 hotels, I can safely say that the hotel was generally finished to more or less 98%, and then the contractors would go to another project, and then the hotel team would be left with doing all the snagging and maybe buy some decoration at IKEA, or try to fix little problems here and there. But when I had a guarantee, I would tell an owner, I can only start delivering on that guarantee whenever you have finished the building 100%. If that's not the case, then we will not deliver on that guarantee. So both would be protected. The same contracts, guaranteed contracts, would show very, very strict underperformance clauses, meaning that there would be quite a long chapter on explaining what could be an underperformance from the operator and what could be an underperformance from the owner. To give you one of the other provisions of the contract, we all know that management contracts, they stipulate that the operator gets sole and exclusive rights to manage the hotel. We also know a lot of owners who like to, could you please hire this person because I know him, or could you please buy here because I know this, or could you go that and etc. In a management contract with a guarantee, this would be absolutely impossible. And anything that an owner would try to mingle with hotel operations, the owner would find himself in breach of contract. So the operator would guarantee, but on the opposite side, the operator would also be very strict on the applications of the contract. Now, I which region are you working in?
Romania.
Okay. Now, I can safely say, because of the risk of operating in some of the countries, those guaranteed contracts, and they're very similar to lease contracts, they will only happen in mature destinations. So
I was afraid you would say that.
city center Paris or city center London or Scandinavia, that's fine. But if I have to open a hotel in Vladivostok, you will not get a guaranteed result. You would get a straight management contract because there's too much risk. Okay, so it's about risk mitigation. We can have a discussion about risk mitigation, but it's all to do with risk management.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question?
Yes. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Anyway, it will be very nice under this social distance to reduce a little bit this distance, because it's very difficult to speak to a number or to an hotel brand, even with the first name. That please be so nice to know better each other. Okay, next question, please.
Hi, my name is Bogdan. I'm representing Best Western Hotel in Bucharest. I would like to know if we may have access to a guideline as best practices to fill all aspects of management contract. Thank you.
We can certainly arrange something, but I'm sure that Mr. Ray Yunius will contact you, or you contact him direct to see what is possible. But I'm sure we can share some information on some way.
I'm talking just as general information, like aspects we have to keep in mind when signing a contract. Yeah.
Of what, etc., etc. So maybe it's good to have a separate discussion for your specific question on with Ray, that he can sort of try to understand more what your question is, and then we could see what we can do.
Good, thank you.
In any case, before you sign the contract, it's very good to have very good lawyers and to have some knowledge about this, because it's not an easy part to sign a contract for contract management, because after you can suffer for at least 11 years, if not more, like this. But my colleague Pierre, he spoke about the subject. It was asset management and not contract management. Then he referred to the contract management just as a part of this. Usually, I repeat it, it's a very difficult job. It's a sandwich person who is between the GM and the owner. And this is a very tricky business. It's true that in Romania and Serbia do not have a lot of asset manager, because you do not have a lot of chain with more than a 5-star and 4-star. But usually we have a lot in the country where the chain attendance is bigger. Another question, please.
Just to pick up on what you said, Ray,
yes.
Lawyers are fine, but lawyers don't understand operation. And a management contract is about how you and I are going to work together on a property. Now, the legalities of things is important, is absolutely right. But, for example, a performance clause, no lawyer has the information today to write a proper performance clause. What is good, what is bad? They don't know. They know the law, but they don't know operation. So my advice would be, yes, you have to have a lawyer. You also need to talk to someone who has read more than one management contract before and know how it impacts operation.
Yes, 100%. You are right. I was speaking about the specialized lawyer. Then there are few of them, and some houses as the model who wrote all the books in States. But you are right. Then the best thing is to have a good consultant. Yeah. Okay. Next question, please. Next question, if any.
Regarding OTAs, I also asked the question in the forum after the first session. Pierre, you said that you advocate for OTAs and commission-based models. My question is how you mitigate increasing negotiation power of OTAs, including to large hotel chains, because they will go easy, small step by small step to get to the hotel margins. I ask this because I'm coming from the food industry. I was a founder of online marketplace for food delivery. And after we had an exit, we saw the dynamics when we got market domination, how hard it was for the brands to negotiate their deals, even if they were big brands.
If we talk about OTAs and the relationship of the brands with OTAs, it's certain that the bigger the brand, the bigger the impact within OTA. Okay? So when I was the general manager with Radisson, at that time the bookings.com commission was substantially less than what you would negotiate as a hotel owner individually, or 10, 20 hotels group. So the bigger the brand, the bigger their impact on the OTA. There is an ongoing discussion today, and a lot of the webinars that I participate in, whether it's as a listener or as a participant, we hear a lot of the people that work with OTAs that are not happy with OTAs. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. You can decide to work with an OTA, or you can decide not to work with an OTA. Like a wedding contract, you like the wife you want to marry, you marry her. But you can't say after 2 years, well, you can get a divorce, but you can't say I want to stay in the same marriage but not with the same wife, right? I know it's a bit of a caricature, but it's the OTAs. It's a choice you make. It's a choice you make as an operator or as a hotel owner. There's a number of things that you cannot do. If you want to work on the immediate vicinity market as a hotel, your own surrounding, which is probably going to be what most hotels will have to do when we come out of this crisis, then you could start working without OTAs or try to limit or lessen the impact of the OTAs, because you have more direct access in your own region than some of the OTAs. But it's when you want to work with long distance customers and you are not willing to put up the costs of going to America or spending money in the web channels in America, etc. So your only choice to get that part of the business is you go through an OTA. So it's give and take. But I like OTAs also, or I like certain aspects of that business, because it also pushes people to think a little bit differently. So I don't know if you know a group called Citizen M. Citizen M is a group that is, you can look them up on the internet, but the owner has looked at OTAs and has said at some point, well, why do I need a sales department if I can have an OTA? And his efforts in the beginning of his group have been to say, I will not have a sales department, so I don't have 5 or 6 or 10 people that I have to pay every month. But I will give my entire business to the OTA, one in particular, and they will do my marketing, they will communicate for me, and in return, I pay a fee. But if you want to obviously have your own sales department, you want to have all the OTAs, etc., well, yes, you are adding a lot of cost. So you need to make choices. I'm not sure I answered your question. Did I?
Somehow. I was more comparing to the food industry, where the marketplaces, they're changing the rules on the go. So when you are in beginning, when they are quite small, they give you a lot of advantages, and then they start increasing the commission, penalizing you on where are you listed on your list. So it can be impossible to.
Let me return the question.
Okay.
If you were them, how would you do it? You would probably entice them to come, attracting them with low costs, and then you would do the same.
Yeah, we did that. We in food, we did that. It's how the industry is protecting against this. It would be more like.
So what are your options? Are you able to do what they do for yourself? If not, sadly, it's a way of distribution. It's a way of reaching out to the customer.
For the industry associations to try to control this or try to negotiate better deals.
It's a very valid deal. But what I've seen in the market, and I worked with a couple of hotel associations, and I've been myself the president of the Brussels Hotel Association in Belgium, is as soon as I start talking to my colleague next door about working together, then we have a problem. Yeah, but you're going to make more money than I do, and we pay the same. So how does this work? So if people are willing to work together and accept the consequences of working together, which means that if you go and work with 2 or 3 different restaurants and you pool together, then you will have to accept that maybe one guy or 2 guys are going to get more out of the relationship than you are in one particular month, or maybe during a couple of months. And that is sometimes where the problem is. We would like to associate, but we'd like to all be equal, and that's not going to work.
Then I can confirm what you said, Pierre, because we tried also in Switzerland to create with the Swiss Hotel Association a national OTA in order to drive exactly what you said. But if you have at least 10 hotels who are not playing the game, everything, you lose everything. Then that's the problem with the hotelier. It's the same problem with the restaurant. And it's exactly as Pierre he mentioned. Be happy that when you are paid the commission, but because that means that you have the customer. Okay, it's much better to have the middleman who will bring you some business than to have no middleman and your business is zero. And it's a trade-off, it's for sure. Then the more you increase your business, more you have a power of negotiation also with the OTA. It's a necessary evil today. I don't see another way for the moment. But I'm sure that in this period, and this is very important, do not forget the thousands and thousands of people working for Expedia, for Booking, and so far. They are also staying at home. They do not have customer. What do you think that they are doing? They are preparing the next wave of different applications, and you guys from hospitality are not doing the same. You are just trying the situation and so far that I understand. But these people, they will develop even more their tools, and they will come back in hospitality with much more sophisticated tools. Okay? And that's another issue. Next question. Thank you, Mihai, for your question. Next question, please.
Okay, I have some question. Ognjenka from Serbian team. About something you told us a few minutes ago. So your advice is for us to have one expert in one area who will make the proposal for us with professional terms, and after that I, like a lawyer, can enter that into the contract.
You're talking about management contracts?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, our recommendation would be on a case per case. Obviously, we need to understand the market and the business that the hotel is in, because some regions you can push for better conditions or different conditions because of the market situations, etc. But yes, we would recommend that if you negotiate a management contract, you would talk to an asset manager or another party that understands operations, understands management. Because generally management contracts are written by the operator. And this is not innocent. The operators know well what they write in a contract and what they put in a contract. So we need to understand that there is the legality of things, that's for sure. But we also need to understand, and we have that expertise to understand the aim, the objective that the operating company have when they write a contract. Because they know why they write the clauses. They know what they put in the contract. We need to understand.
Okay.
Have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you.
Shall we go for a last question, Pierre?
You know, my next plane is in 3 months or so you decide.
Okay, then next question, please.
Let's have 2 or 3 more if we have.
Okay, next one. Did we intimidate somebody, please?
Or they all left on a coffee break?
I'm sorry. I would like to actually make an observation. I mean, I heard your explanation about the management contracts with the guarantees that they are offered only in mature markets and so on. But you know what? I was wondering.
I'm saying that's what I have seen.
No, okay. Because you see,
this is an absolute truth.
No, I understand. But since I haven't seen one here in our country, in Romania, you know, I feel a bit frustration here. I mean, what's the value of an operator, especially an international one and the big one that is, operating various brands and so on. What is his value if he's offering guarantees? Okay, so if he's giving something only for places where he knows for sure that he can get money. I mean, his value should be in a place where, okay, there aren't too many people, skilled to do what he's doing, and that would be his value for an owner.
Well, you said
for a market that is not that mature as other like London or Paris. Okay, so this is where I would, if anybody would come to me and say, here, there's a management contract for your hotel. Okay, for you are holding this hotel, this property, and I would like to operate it, or give that property to me to operate it. I would ask that operator, I would say, okay, will you give me a guarantee? And if he will say, but the Romania or Bucharest or other city in Romania, it's not a mature market. It's not a mature place.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a risk for the operator.
Yeah, of course, but that's where it should come. His, as I said, his value should come from this point that he knows how to make money operating a hotel. Yeah, he looks at the market. I'm not saying the value of the guarantee or the level of the guarantee. It may be, higher or lower, depending on the place where that hotel would be operated. But just to exclude this possibility, let's say, because it's not a mature market, if I would be an owner, I would think twice in giving my hotel to an operator just like that.
Well, a couple of things I would like to say here is, first of all, a contract you can negotiate. So, if you manage to include a guarantee for Bucharest, hey, lucky you, or for Romania, lucky. Me being very cynical, but my experience also tells me this, is that generally the relationship is that the owner is looking for an operator. And generally it's not an operator that's looking for an owner. So that changes also the balance of the relationship. What the other thing that I'm sure that we understand is that the bigger the name that you want to put on your facade, the less flexibility you will have as an owner. I remember working for an operator and they were expanding heavily. Our contracts at the time were 30 pages long. But the same owner or owners would have liked to talk to Four Seasons. When you see the Four Seasons contract, first of all, they only open about 10 to 15 hotels a year, and it's more than 400 pages. Okay, why? Because they don't want you. You want them, and that's how they base their relationship on. And Marriott, the same. Hilton, the same. So let's not think, and I'm sorry to say this, but owners, it's generally an owner that will look for an operator, and not the opposite.
If you allow me, Pierre, there's another few issues here. When you are looking for a branded operator, and this is a right name, you are looking also first for a brand. And it's not the moment now to speak about the power of a brand. Then you are looking also for a brand. Why? Because your future customer, if they are not from Romania, and even if they are from Romania, they will look for this brand. This will be the guarantee. The second issue we discussed about the OTA. More you have a big brand in front of an OTA, less you have the cost of the transaction of the OTA. Now, the guarantee or not the guarantee, just keep in mind, at least to look a little bit with much more modesty, that your hotel is never primary destination. It's Bucharest or it's Romania. Then as far as in Romania, Bucharest is very attractive, maybe you'll have big brand operator that will give you a guarantee. But for the moment, that's the name of the emerging market that you have to work together in order to arrive to this level. If not, it's your decision. As for the OTA, you don't want the OTA because he's not giving you a guarantee, do it with your own brand. If your brand is so good enough to have customer, it's perfect. You don't need OTA, don't look for an OTA. But unfortunately, more you have experience in this market, more you can see the difference. When a foreigner is coming in Bucharest, I'm asking you, who will choose the first thing? And if you go to some booking and Expedia, what will be the first in the top of the list? That is you are paying for. Everything has a price. Another question, please.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, please. No other question?
Okay. We will share this presentation. It's available. I think Mr. Yunus will share it with you at some point. And any questions you may have in the future, any help or recommendations you'd like to talk to us about, please go to Mr. Yunus and he will certainly facilitate things. So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank all around the table, first of all, Mr. Yunus for hosting this.
I want to thank you once again, Pierre. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you to all the participants for taking the time and for listening to me.